What's up, peeps? I want to do this video today because of a box that I got in the mail that had some very interesting items in it. I didn't do an unboxing, the box was too big to get under my camera, but instead of doing individual videos on these knives, because most of them are no longer available, I kind of wanted to touch on what this box meant to me and kind of the path that it sent me down going through it, and that was the history of pocket knives. Now, guys, believe it or not, a long, long time ago, all knives were pretty much kind of like this. They were, pretty much rough ground, little fixed blades that were made to do a job. They were just simply cutting tools, and fancy materials and things like that didn't go into it. Men just needed a way of simply separating one piece of media into multiple pieces of media, whether that be wood, cloth, whatever it was. A knife was the job, was the tool for that job, and for a long, long time, all we had were fixed blades. Now I know the history goes back, even further than this, all the way into sharp rocks. But I just wanted to touch on that briefly to kind of show where we started. As I am not a historian, I do not have dates on this stuff. I'm just kind of going over some of the phases of pocket knife. Um, this is a Higo friction folder from Japan. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because this is the bare bones minimum of a pocket knife. This thing does not have a detent. You'll kind of learn what a detent here is in a little while. So to carry in the pocket was fairly dangerous. If you bump this, that blade's poking out. It's probably going to stab you in the leg or in the junk. But yeah, this was one of the first iterations of a pocket knife, a folding knife. Um, it could be folded up and concealed in a very small package. And then upon opening, you had a fairly long blade to do work with. There was nothing fancy about this. It is simply one folded piece of brass and a pivot and a blade. So this is kind of where we started with folding pocket knives, was the old friction folder. At some point in time, I don't know the dates, but we kind of evolved into the slip joints. Everybody has seen a slip joint. Everybody's experienced one. Your dad, your pawpaw, his pawpaw, probably all carried a slip joint. This was also so that you could fold your knife up, hide the blade, keep the blade put away until you needed to do work and you could open it. This is not a locking knife. This has a spring bar in the back with a flat face that meets a flat face on the blade itself. So when you go to close it, there are actually two flat faces. So you have a half stop there. But keep in mind, because I'm calling that a stop, it is not locked. It's just under some spring tension. And there you have a slip joint. Slip joints dominated the market for many, many years. They're still out there today. People are even making modern interpretations of them um, with modern materials. In my opinion, the knife that changed it all was this one, the Buck 110 with the back lock. This knife has a locking blade. It will not shut until you engage the back lock right here. And that's why I say, in my mind, this knife changed the pocket knife industry. It gave you a very robust, well-made cutting tool out of premium materials for its time, and added the safety feature of being able to lock that knife open. It was also very stiff to open, so there was very little chance of this coming open in your pocket. Now, when Buck designed this and kind of took over the world with pocket knives, they did not include a pocket clip yet. That was still yet to come. This was carried in a sheath on your belt, mostly by tradesmen, blue collar worker type people. But this knife, in my opinion, did more to change the industry than everything before it. And after that, it just kind of went. It kind of went crazy from there. The innovations just kept rolling in, and in my opinion, this was the knife that kind of started the EDC pocket knife movement, the Ontario Rat Model 1. There were pocket knives made before this. I get it. But this is the knife that made it super popular to carry, a folding knife. It had a reliable liner lock. As you can see right there, this little bar slides over, locks the blade open. You simply push it out of the way to shut it. Probably been more of these and these sold than everything else put together. And guys, in all honesty, these are still great everyday carry options. These are still great work knife options. However, the industry, as in any industry, innovation has kept coming along, kept making things better. So we went from liner locks to, let me find an example here of a frame lock. Chris Reeve designed the integral frame lock. As you can see here, this has a titanium frame, it has a cut in it and a relief here. And this lock bar is under spring tension to go this way. So when you open it, it kicks over, locks the blade open. Most of your premium knives being sold today are in this fashion. Most of your premium knives are frame lock knives. This has become very popular. However, the price differences between what you paid for this or the buck, you were talking about $30, $60, and now we're into the 400 and up range. Pocket knives now, I've held one in my hand personally that sold for over $10,000. That's not necessary. That's a hype thing. That's a pride thing. You don't need that. That's something that you simply want. And since the invention of the liner lock and the frame lock, there have been a lot of other locks to come along that have kind of changed the knife industry. Here's a fine example of that with the Benchmade Contigo and its Axis lock. Benchmade had a patent on this for a long time. It's finally, the patent has run out, and now everybody is making their rendition of a crossbar lock. But this knife actually represents something more than just a innovation in a lock design. I'm not saying it's the first one. It's one of the first that I remember when they started delving into what we now call super steels. Keep in mind, guys, that when this knife came out, this was considered a super steel. And now we're up into tool steels like M4 and Crewwear and MagnaCut and all these great steels that hold an edge for a great long time. And they all have different attributes, but like I said, this knife represents a lot more to me than just the innovation in the lock. This kind of also represents this path we've gone down into super steels and things such as that seems to be a very driving force in the pocket knife industry now. Is what blade steel is it? How did they heat treat it? Things like that make a huge difference to some of us, others not. Somewhere in along this timeline, though, probably shortly after the Rat, which is made in Taiwan, the Chinese made pocket knives, before this, but it seemed like after this, when they seen the popularity and they seen the profit that could be made from making good pocket knives, China, started reverse engineering a lot of our designs, and they actually started making good quality pocket knives. This is a fine example of that. This is the Artisan Tradition. It's probably their most overlooked knife. However, in my opinion, it's probably the best knife they ever made. No, it does not have a super high-end steel, nor does it have a super high-end heat treat, but they were filling a niche for people wanting slightly more modern materials and cooler designs at a relatively inexpensive price range. So, as bad as I hate to admit it, the Chinese are as much a part of knife history as America is at this point. We went on from things like that and started getting into slightly more exotic lock mechanisms like the button lock that you see on the new ProTech Mordax. Simply mashing a button, the blade drops shut. It does utilize a good detent. Detent is just what it says, guys. It's a small ceramic ball that's riding in a hole on the blade on the inside. You can't see it from here. That keeps the knife firmly closed. And when you go to open it, what somebody figured out is if you can tune that right, once you break that detent, that knife will deploy almost like an automatic. It's a beautiful thing. It's become a huge part of knife design and knife reviewing, in all honesty, because when you back up to an older tactical knife design, such as this old M-Tech from the 80s, the detent was horrible. This was, a 440C blade on aluminum slabs. However, this, believe it or not, was a high-end pocket knife at one time. This sold for about $170, $180 in 440C and aluminum scales. Very cool part of knife history. I was very privileged to even get to experience this thing. Excited about that. And of course, we can't forget, I don't know at what point in time, somebody decided, you know what? These knives just need to open themselves. Just mash a button and bam, they open. That's led into almost a whole other genre of knives when you get into automatics and people's opinions on what they're for, what they're good for, whether they're good for anything, whatever. It's just really cool to have witnessed some of this stuff, like this old Almar from the 80s and RWL 34 and lot back. Guys, this was a fully integral plastic handle. This was a premium knife in the 80s and RWL 30. This thing sold for $160, $170. It was made in Japan. Great craftsmanship for its day. This was super lightweight before the bug out was even a thing. It's really cool just getting to experience some of the history of knife collecting that I ordinarily would have never got to experience. So you know who you are, the guy that sent me this stuff. That's not all he sent. There's more, but it was very interesting to me to be able to experience some of this and see, where we once were compared to where we are now, as far as innovation, performance, safety, all that stuff. This knife would be considered extremely unsafe by today's standards because it doesn't lock. It doesn't even have spring tension holding it open. It's just the tension on that liner, pinching that blade is all that's holding it there. But keep in mind, guys, people got by for decades carrying nothing but things like this. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, kind of going down through the annals of history to see where we came from in pocket knives, and I just wanted to kind of share some of that with you guys. I'm sure I missed some stuff and may have even got something in the wrong order, but that's not what this was about. I'm not trying to teach a class. I was just showing my experience with what I've got to check out in the past few days, and wanted to share that with you guys. You guys know I appreciate any amount of time y'all spend with me. Peace. Love y'all.